My wife humiliated me at her rich friend's party, calling my work pathetic cubicle slavery. While they all laughed, she had no idea I was secretly a senior partner worth millions, planning our escape to Singapore with the children. When she showed up in my office to apologize, she found it empty. My name is Alistair Vance. I'm 42 years old, and until recently, I thought I had a life of quiet stability. Married to Alara for 16 years, father to Tristan, who is 15, and Clara, who is 12. We live in a comfortable house in Connecticut. The children attend respectable schools, and I work in corporate restructuring. Not a life of flashy excess, but one founded on duty and precision. It paid the bills and ensured our future. The thing is, Alara never truly grasped the nature of my work. When people asked, she would adopt this vague, detached expression and mumble something about computers and spreadsheets. She'd never bothered to learn that I was actually a senior partner at Vance & Associates, the firm I'd helped build from the ground up 12 years prior. To her, I simply disappeared into some generic office building every day, returning with a predictable paycheck, a stable anchor she could take for granted. That Friday night in October, we were at Gillis and Sophie Dubois's apartment for their annual Halloween party. Gillis had made his fortune in real estate, and Sophie lived to remind everyone of it. Their penthouse overlooked Central Park, and everything about it screamed expensive taste mixed with a desperate desire for social status. I was nursing a bourbon, watching Alara work the room in the black cocktail dress she'd purchased specifically for this gathering. She had that animated energy she reserves for wealthy circles, as if she were auditioning for a permanent role. Gillis approached me with the predatory smile he uses just before he seeks to entertain himself at someone else's expense. Alistair, remind me what you do again. Something with filing cabinets and data entry, right? Before I could formulate a polite counter, Alara materialized beside us with Sophie in tow. Oh, Alistair works in this tiny office doing spreadsheets all day, Alara said, her voice carrying that dismissive tone I'd been noting more often lately. He sits in this pathetic little cubicle, organizing other people's financial mess. The word cubicle struck me like a slap of cold water. I do not work in a cubicle. I have a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Hartford, a space earned through years of cold, measured effort. But more than the inaccuracy, the way she pronounced pathetic with genuine disdain caused a cold, sharp clarity to settle in my chest. Sophie tittered. How practical. Gillis always says someone has to do the boring work while the real players make the big moves. Gillis raised his glass. Here's to the little people who keep the machinery running. They all laughed. Even Alara, who threw her head back as if it were the funniest thing she'd ever heard. My wife, the mother of my children, laughing at her friend's casual cruelty toward me. I stood there, glass in hand, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. Not a burst of anger, but a profound sense of betrayal that cut through 16 years of marriage like a clean stroke of a Tonto. Someone has to keep the books balanced, I said with a smile, raising my glass to join their toast. Can't have everyone playing in the big leagues. More laughter, more confirmation that in this room, I was nothing more than a punchline. But as I stood there playing the good sport, the tape may, my mind was already elsewhere, calculating timelines and possibilities, the Han. Because while Alara was busy explaining to these people why I was essentially invisible, she had no idea that her invisible husband was about to become the biggest surprise of her perfectly planned life. The drive home from the Dubois penthouse was a prolonged torture of small talk. Alara chattered away about the party as if nothing of consequence had occurred, going on about Sophie's new jewelry and how charming everyone found her stories about Tristan's soccer achievements. She was practically glowing from the attention. You were so good tonight, honey, Alara said, reaching over to pat my knee while I navigated the Manhattan traffic. You know how to handle Gillis when he gets like that. He doesn't mean anything by it. Handle Gillis, as if I were some kind of trained dog performing tricks for table scraps. Sure thing, I replied, keeping my voice steady and flat. Just glad everyone had a good time. What I didn't say was that I'd been running numbers in my head since we left. The partnership agreements I'd signed 8 years ago when we restructured the firm. The equity stake I held that Alara knew nothing about. The international expansion we'd been planning that would require a trusted partner to relocate to our new Singapore office. When we reached home, I poured myself another bourbon and sat in my study while Alara went upstairs for her nightly beauty routine. Tristan wandered in around midnight, still wired from his video games. "Dad, you okay?" Tristan asked, settling into the leather chair across from my desk. "You seem kind of quiet." My son is perceptive. He inherited his mother's social intelligence, but thankfully my ability to actually think before speaking. "Just thinking about work stuff," I told him. "How's school going?" "Still planning on trying out for varsity baseball in the spring." "Yeah, Coach Rodriguez thinks I have a shot at starting pitcher," Tristan said, his face lighting up. "Mom said she might not be able to make all the games because of her new promotion, but you'll be there, right?" New promotion. Alara had been dropping vague hints for weeks. Probably another lateral move with a fancy title that would give her more ammunition for her social climbing campaigns. "I'll do my best, son," I said. "You know I'm proud of you, right? Whatever happens." He nodded, but I caught the slight confusion in his eyes. Children always sense when the harmony, is broken, even when they cannot name the fracture. After Tristan went to bed, I sat alone in my study, staring at the family photos on my desk. Alara and I on our honeymoon in Tuscany. The children at various ages, all smiles and missing teeth. 16 years of building a life. And tonight, my wife had summed up my worth as a human being in one dismissive sentence about pathetic work. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to my business partner, Dominic Rossi. We'd been discussing the Singapore opportunity for months, but I'd been hesitant because of family obligations. Tonight had clarified those obligations with a painful courage. Tomorrow, I would begin the meticulous process of untangling 16 years of shared life. But tonight, I allowed myself one last moment of cold mourning for the marriage I thought I had, before I began building the future my wife had just convinced me I deserved. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that usually energized me. Instead, I felt like a man preparing for a complex siege. I'd spent the weekend researching divorce attorneys and considering custody arrangements. But first, I needed to define the true scope of the battle. Dominic Rossi called me back within an hour of my arrival at the office. "Alistair, good to hear from you about Singapore. What changed your mind?" "Personal circumstances," I said, closing my office door. "How quickly could we make this happen?" 3 months, maybe 4, if we need to expedite the transition. The board has been waiting for your decision. You know you're the only partner they trust with this expansion." After hanging up, I made another call that Alara would never anticipate. I dialed Detective Services International, a firm I'd worked with during some corporate investigations. "This is Alistair Vance," I told the receptionist. "I need to speak with someone about a personal matter." 20 minutes later, I was on the phone with Patricia Hendris, a former FBI agent who specialized in domestic cases. Her voice was professional but warm. "Mr. Vance, what can we help you with?" "I suspect my wife is having an affair," I said, the words feeling alien coming from my mouth. "I need comprehensive evidence before I proceed with any legal action." Patricia's tone shifted to pure business. "We can handle surveillance, digital forensics, financial tracking. What's your timeline?" "I need comprehensive documentation within 6 weeks," I replied. "My wife works at Sterling Marketing Solutions. I believe she's involved with someone from her office." That afternoon, I started making subtle changes at home. I installed a new router with better monitoring capabilities and began paying closer attention to Alara's schedule. She'd been working late 3 nights a week for the past month, claiming she was preparing for a promotion. During dinner, I tested the waters. "How's that promotion coming along?" I asked Alara while cutting into my steak. "Oh, it's still in development," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "These things take time. You know how corporate bureaucracy works." Tristan looked up from his phone. "Mom, didn't you say last week that your new boss was really young? What was his name again?" Alara's fork stopped midway to her mouth. Jules Fournier. He's the new regional director. Jules Fournier. I made a mental note to have Patricia run a background check on him. "Sounds like an ambitious guy," I said casually. Maybe I should meet him sometime. Oh, that's not necessary, Alara said quickly. You know how boring work talk can be. That night, while Alara was in the shower, I checked her phone. She'd started using a passcode recently. I noticed her typing it in several times, 0847. Jules's birthday, perhaps. The screen unlocked easily. Her text history with Jules Fournier told me everything I needed to know. Messages about meeting after work, compliments about her appearance, suggestions for discreet restaurants. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, but the tone was unmistakably intimate. One message from Jules caught my attention. Can't wait to see you in that black dress again. You looked incredible at the Morrison party. The Morrison party? They'd been together at other social events, and I'd been too focused on business to notice. I took screenshots and sent them to my secure email, then deleted the evidence of my snooping. By the time Alara came out of the bathroom, I was reading a financial report in bed, looking like the boring husband she thought she could deceive indefinitely. But I wasn't just gathering evidence anymore. I was building a strategy that would leave her with nothing but regrets and a very expensive lesson about underestimating the man she'd married. The next few weeks became an elaborate performance, a heightened state of Tate May. I transformed into the husband Alara had always claimed she wanted, attentive, romantic, and completely oblivious to her betrayal. It was easier than I expected, probably because I finally had a clear, cold purpose. I started bringing her coffee in bed every morning, complete with that fancy creamer she liked from the gourmet store. I bought flowers every Friday, always roses, always with a note about how beautiful she looked. I planned weekend getaways to small bed and breakfasts in New England, the kind of romantic escapes she'd been hinting about for months. Alara devoured it like a woman starving for attention. She'd post photos of the flowers on social media with captions about having such a thoughtful husband. She'd text her girlfriends about our spontaneous dinner dates and weekend trips. She thought she'd finally trained me to be the man she deserved. What she didn't know was that every romantic gesture was carefully calculated. While she was posting happy couple photos, I was documenting our families. Financial assets. While she was texting Jules about their next meeting, I was transferring funds to accounts she couldn't access. While she was bragging to Sophie about my renewed romantic interest, I was meeting with custody attorneys. Patricia's first report arrived on a Wednesday. Jules Fournier was 28, recently divorced, with a reputation for pursuing married women at his previous company. He'd been fired from his last job for an inappropriate relationship with a client's wife. Alara was not his first target, and she probably wouldn't be his last. The photographs were damning, but not surprising. Jules and Alara having lunch at expensive restaurants during work hours. Jules's hand on her back as they walked into a downtown hotel. Alara looking radiant and alive in ways I hadn't seen in years. All for a man who was likely using her for entertainment and career advancement. During one of our romantic dinners, I decided to test how deep this went. You seem really happy lately, I told Alara over candlelight at her favorite restaurant. Is the promotion making that much difference? It's not just work, she said, reaching across the table to take my hand. You've been so wonderful these past few weeks. It feels like we're newlyweds again. The irony was devastating. She was crediting her affair with Jules for the happiness she was feeling while simultaneously enjoying the attention I was giving her. She wanted both the excitement of her young lover and the security of her dependable husband. I just want to make sure you're happy, I said, squeezing her fingers. You deserve to have everything you want. That night, she was more passionate than she'd been in months. Afterwards, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. She thought she was playing me like a violin, but I was conducting the entire orchestra. My phone buzzed with a text from Dominic. Singapore approval came through. When can you start planning the transition? I typed back, 2 months. I'll need to handle some personal arrangements first. Personal arrangements? That was one way to describe dismantling a 16-year marriage and ensuring I came out with my children and my dignity intact. Tomorrow, I would continue being the perfect husband, but each day was bringing me closer to the moment when Alara would discover that her safety net had quietly packed up and moved halfway around the world. By December, I had transformed into a ghost in my own life. Alara saw the loving husband bringing her flowers and planning romantic dinners. What she didn't see was the strategic dismantling of everything she thought she could depend on. My first move was restructuring our financial accounts. I visited our bank on a Tuesday morning when Alara was at her yoga class. "Mr. Vance, how can we help you today?" asked Helena Brandt, our personal banker for the past 8 years. "I need to restructure our accounts for better tax management," I explained, sliding the necessary paperwork across her desk. "I'm anticipating some significant changes in our financial situation." Within 2 hours, I had established new accounts in my name only, redirected my direct deposits, and modified the spending limits on our joint credit cards. Nothing illegal, nothing that would raise immediate red flags, but everything positioned for maximum impact when the time came. That afternoon, I met with Patricia Hendricks at a coffee shop downtown. She slid a manila envelope across the table. "Everything you requested," Patricia said quietly. "Jules Fournier has quite a history. 3 affairs in 2 years, all with married women. He's currently renting an apartment on the Upper East Side that costs more than his salary should allow." The photographs inside the envelope told the complete story. Jules and Alara entering his apartment building. Jules's hand around her waist at restaurants I'd never heard of. Alara looking radiant and alive in ways that made my chest tighten with a detached pity. "There's more," Patricia continued. "Your wife has been using the joint credit card for hotels, expensive dinners, gifts. She charged €2,000 at Cartier last week. €2,000 for a man she'd known less than 4 months. That evening, Alara presented me with a new watch. Early Christmas present, she said, fastening the expensive leather strap around my wrist. I thought you deserved something special." The irony was breathtaking. She bought me a gift with our money to ease her guilt about spending our money on another man. "It's beautiful," I said, kissing her cheek. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," Alara replied, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "You've been such an amazing husband lately." Later that night, I called Dominic from my study. "The Singapore transition needs to happen faster," I told him. "Can we move the timeline to January?" "January is aggressive, but doable," Dominic replied. "What's the rush?" "Personal circumstances have escalated," I said, watching Alara through the window as she talked on her phone in the garden. Even from a distance, I could see her animated gestures, the way she touched her hair when she was flirting. The hardest part of this entire process was protecting Tristan and Clara from the fallout that was coming. They deserved better than having their lives destroyed by their mother's selfish choices. But they also deserved to know the truth about who was really fighting for their future. I scheduled a meeting with Sylvie Moreau, the family attorney Patricia had recommended. Her office was in Midtown, all leather and mahogany, possessing the kind of quiet authority that costs €500 an hour. "Mr. Vance, I've reviewed the evidence your investigator provided," Sylvie said, spreading photographs and documents across our conference table. "This is a strong case for primary custody, especially given the financial irresponsibility and moral conduct issues." "What about international relocation?" I asked. "My company is moving me to Singapore. With this level of documentation, and given that you're the primary financial provider, most judges would approve relocation," Sylvie explained. "Especially if we can demonstrate that the children's mother has been prioritizing her affair over their welfare." That weekend, I took Tristan and Clara on what I privately called our farewell tour of Connecticut. We visited their favorite places, the aquarium in Norwalk, the pizza place where we'd celebrated every birthday, the hiking trail where I taught Tristan to identify different types of trees. "Dad, why are you being so weird lately?" Clara asked while we were walking along the beach in Westport. "You keep acting like we're never going to see these places again." My 12-year-old daughter's intuition was sharper than her mother's awareness. "Just appreciating what we have," I told her, wrapping my arm around her shoulders. Sometimes grown-ups need reminders about what's really important. Tristan kicked at the sand, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" The question hit me like cold water. "What makes you ask that?" "She's been acting different," Tristan said. "Happy, but fake happy. You know, like she's pretending everything's great, but something's actually wrong. I stopped walking and looked at my son, 15 years old, and he could see through his mother's performance better than her friends, her coworkers, even herself. Tristan, whatever happens between your mother and me, you need to know that I love you and Clara more than anything in this world, I said. And I will always fight for what's best for both of you. He nodded, but I could see the worry in his eyes. Children shouldn't have to worry about adult problems, but Alara had made choices that would force our children to grow up faster than they should have to. That night, I sat in my study making lists, financial assets to protect, legal documents to prepare, custody arrangements to finalize. The Singapore apartment had been secured, a 3-bedroom place with access to excellent international schools nearby. In 6 weeks, Alara's world would implode. But my children's world would simply relocate to somewhere their father could give them the stability and respect their mother had decided they didn't deserve. February arrived like a countdown timer reaching 0. I had exactly 2 weeks before my departure to Singapore, and the financial pressure I'd been applying was finally showing results. Alara's credit card started getting declined at her usual boutiques. Her streaming services began sending payment notices, and her Uber account required constant attention. Honey, there's something wrong with our bank accounts, Alara said Thursday morning, standing in our kitchen with her phone in hand. My yoga membership payment bounced, and Starbucks declined my card yesterday. I looked up from my newspaper with practiced concern. That's strange. I'll call Helena this afternoon and sort it out. Could you check today? Alara asked, her voice carrying the first hint of genuine worry I'd heard in months. I have lunch plans, and I don't want my card getting declined again. Lunch plans with Jules, no doubt. Of course, I replied. These bank glitches happen sometimes. That afternoon, Patricia called with final intelligence. Jules Fournier gave notice at Sterling Marketing yesterday, she reported. Sources say he's planning to relocate to California for a new opportunity. California. The coward was preparing his own exit strategy, probably sensing that his relationship with my wife was becoming more complicated than profitable. Has he told Alara about his plans? I asked. Our surveillance suggests she has no idea, Patricia replied. She's been texting him about Valentine's Day plans while he's been apartment hunting in Los Angeles. Perfect. While Alara was planning romantic holidays with her lover, he was already mentally checked out and geographically relocating. She was about to lose both her husband and her backup plan in the same month. That evening, Alara seemed unusually clingy during dinner. She kept touching my arm and asking about my day with an intensity that felt desperate rather than loving. Everything okay? I asked. You seem stressed. Just work pressure, she replied, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Jules has been talking about some big changes coming to the department. Big changes. If only she knew how big those changes were going to be. Later that night, I packed the last of my personal items while Alara was taking her bath. Family photos for the children, important documents, my father's watch. Everything else could stay behind as props for the life she thought she'd been protecting. Tomorrow, I'd submit my final reports and transfer my remaining projects to Dominic. In 2 weeks, I'd be on a plane to Singapore while Alara discovered that safety nets sometimes have expiration dates. Tuesday morning, February 14th, Valentine's Day. The irony was so perfect, it almost felt scripted by someone with a twisted sense of humor. While Alara was probably planning some romantic gesture for Jules, she was about to discover that her reliable husband had already relocated to a different continent. I arrived at the office at 6 in the morning to clear out my desk and say goodbye to colleagues who'd become genuine friends over the past 8 years. Dominic met me in the conference room with coffee and the final transition documents. You sure about this timeline? Dominic asked, watching me sign the last of the paperwork. Seems like you're burning bridges pretty aggressively. Sometimes bridges need burning, I replied, handing him my office keys. Singapore's the right move for everyone involved. By 10 o'clock, my corner office was empty except for the furniture that belonged to the company. My replacement, Isabelle Lemaire from our Boston branch, would arrive next week to take over my client relationships and ongoing projects. I was standing in the lobby, briefcase in hand, when Patricia texted me, Subject heading to your office now. ETA 15 minutes. Perfect timing. Alara was probably arriving with flowers or lunch plans, expecting to find her dependable husband exactly where she'd left him for the past 8 years. Instead, she was going to get the shock of her perfectly planned life. I walked outside and took a taxi to JFK Airport. My flight to Singapore wasn't until 8 that evening, but I wanted to be gone before Alara's world started collapsing around her. While I sat in the airport lounge, Patricia sent me updates via text. Subject arrived at building 10:47 a.m. currently speaking with security, appears confused. 20 minutes later, subject on your floor, talking to your former assistant. Visible distress. Then, subject attempting to call your phone. Unsuccessful. My phone was buzzing constantly now, but I'd already changed my number and updated my contacts with only the people who mattered. Alara could call my old number until her fingers fell off. The final text from Patricia made me smile. Subject left building 11:23 a.m. appears to be crying. I ordered a scotch and settled in for the long flight to my new life. Somewhere in Connecticut, my wife was probably staring at an empty office and finally understanding what happens when you treat someone like they're disposable. The plane lifted off into the gray February skies, carrying me toward a future where I'd be valued for what I could accomplish, rather than tolerated for what I could provide. Alara had taught me an important lesson about respect and appreciation. Now, I was going to put that lesson to good use, 10,000 miles away from anyone who had ever taken me for granted. 3 weeks later, I was settling into my new corner office in Singapore's financial district, a state of perfect saiketsu, when Patricia sent me updates from Connecticut. The fallout had been spectacular and swift. Alara had spent the first week after my departure calling everyone she knew, looking for sympathy and support. According to Patricia's sources, she found neither. Your mutual friends aren't buying her victim story, Patricia reported during our video call. Gillis Du Bois told people at his country club that you were smart to leave before she took everything. The financial reality had hit Alara hard. Without access to our joint accounts, she discovered how expensive her lifestyle actually was. The mortgage payments, insurance, utilities, and Tristan's private school tuition consumed most of her marketing salary. Jules's departure to California had been the final blow. He'd given Alara 2 days' notice before relocating, claiming his new job required immediate relocation. No goodbye dinner, no promises to maintain their relationship long distance. Just a text message wishing her luck with her situation. She's been forced to move in with her sister, Patricia continued. The house went into foreclosure last week. The house we'd bought together, where our children had grown up, lost because she prioritized her affair over our family's financial stability. Tristan and Clara had adjusted to Singapore better than I'd hoped. Tristan joined the international school's baseball team and was already talking about the college opportunities available in Asia. Clara loved her art classes and had made friends with children from around the world. Last Sunday, Alara had attempted a video call with the children. I supervised the conversation from my kitchen while Tristan and Clara spoke with their mother for the first time since our departure. "Mom, why didn't you come with Dad?" Clara asked with the brutal honesty only children possess. Alara's response was telling. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, sweetheart. Mommy thought she could handle things better than she actually could." After the call ended, Tristan looked at me seriously. "Dad, she chose someone else over our family, didn't she?" "Your mother made decisions that affected all of us," I replied carefully. "But you and Clara are here with me, and that's what matters now." That evening, I stood on my apartment balcony overlooking Singapore's skyline, contemplating the life I was building with my children, a life defined by respect, stability, and genuine appreciation for hard work and family values. Alara had taught me valuable lessons about recognizing my worth and protecting what truly mattered. Now, I was applying those lessons 10,000 miles away from anyone who'd ever taken me for granted. 6 months into my Singapore life, I received an email that would have amused me if it hadn't been so predictably desperate. Alara had found my new contact information and was requesting a conversation about reconciliation and family unity. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office when her message arrived. The subject line read, Please give us another chance. The email was a masterpiece of manipulation disguised as a heartfelt apology. She acknowledged her mistakes, claimed she'd learned valuable lessons about appreciating what she had, and suggested that we could rebuild our marriage stronger than before if I just gave her the opportunity to prove herself. She'd undergone therapy, she wrote. She understood now that her affair was about her own insecurities rather than any failing on my part. She missed our family, missed me, and was willing to relocate to Singapore if I would consider taking her back. I read the entire message twice, then deleted it without responding. That afternoon, I picked up Tristan and Clara from the American International School. Tristan had been selected for the varsity baseball team despite being new to the school. Clara had won third place in the regional art competition and was already planning her submission for next year's contest. Dad, Mom called the school today. Clara mentioned while we were having dinner at our favorite hawker center. She wanted to talk to our principal about visiting us. What did you tell her? I asked. I told her. Call you, Tristan said firmly. This is our home now, and you're the one taking care of us. My son had developed a maturity over the past 6 months that would serve him well throughout his life. He understood that loyalty and respect are earned through actions, not words. That evening, I made 2 important phone calls. The first was to Sylvie Moreau in New York. Sylvie, my ex-wife, is requesting reconciliation. What's your advice? Stick to your position, Sylvie replied immediately. She had her chance to be part of your success. Don't let guilt override good judgment. The second call was to my children's school counselor, confirming that both Tristan and Clara were thriving academically and socially in their new environment. Later, I stood on my balcony overlooking Marina Bay, feeling a profound sense of Yugen, the beautiful mystery of a life rebuilt. Alara's betrayal had been devastating at the time, but it had also been liberating. It had forced me to recognize my own worth and fight for the life I deserved. My phone buzzed with another message from Alara, but I didn't read it. Some chapters of your life deserve to stay closed, especially when opening them would threaten the better story you're writing for yourself and the people you love. In Singapore, I wasn't just Alistair Vance, the guy with a boring job. I was the managing director of Southeast Asian operations, a respected father, and a man who'd learned never to accept less than he was worth. That was worth more than any reconciliation could ever offer.